you might be familiar with this. Google Search Console kind of shows you how you track your SEO performance in like in Google, and we want to pull data from Google Search Console into Airtable. So data fetcher uses the concept of requests. So a request is just like a kind of way that you like a recipe, basically, a set of instructions of where we want to get data from and how we should update the base. So we create a request, and then here we can see a list of all the different data sources. So we've got the marketing ones here, we've got some crypto ones, we've got Zero, Stripe, no-code tools like Airtable and Adalo. So if you wanted to import from another Airtable base, you could do it with data fetcher, and then a bunch of different ones as well. So yeah, I'm going to show you Google Search Console. So we click that, then we click this connection here, and then we're going to go through and authenticate with Search Console and give data fetcher access. And then we're going to click save and continue in the bottom right here. And here we'll see a list of different sites. So these are all my properties in Search Console. So which site do I want to pull in data for? So I'm going to use datafetcher.com, a homepage, and then a date range. So this is dynamic, right? So I'm going to say the last 30 days. If I ran this a month ago, it'd be the 30 days before that, right? So it's always going to be kind of, dynamic when we actually run it. And then if we just ran this at the moment, we're just going to get stats for like the entire 30 days. So that would just create like one record in Airtable that just has all the aggregate stats for 30 days. But what we might want to see is a different record for each day. So to see like a list of records based on the day. So I'm going to split by the date. Now we could split by other things. We could split by the page, so the page on our site, and see the stats over those 30 days for the different pages. But yeah, let's do the date. We can add filters, but we'll leave that for now. And then we select the output table and view. So you can see I've got 3 different tables here. I'm going to use the Google Search Console table. And then we can click save and run in the bottom right. And we can see the data coming back from Search Console. So it obviously looks pretty complicated at first, but yeah, we can see we've got the different fields coming back. So we've got date, and we've got these performance metrics. We've got the number of clicks, number of impressions, click-through rate, and position. And for each of those, we can either map it to an existing field or to a new field. And this is where data fetcher really comes into its own, in that this mapping is going to make kind of intelligent suggestions. So it's going to say, okay, you've got a field in your table called date. And I know there's a field coming back from Search Console called date. So I'm going to assume you want to map that one to that one, because the type works and the name is the same. But for clicks, it doesn't find anything called clicks, right? So it's going to suggest that we make a new field called clicks. And that's a numerical field. And then the same for like click-through rate as well, which is %. And yeah, we can see all of these are going to be mapped to new fields. And then we can toggle fields off and on. So we might say, oh, actually, I don't want position. So just leave that one out for now. And then if we really want to get into the nitty gritty of like the API and like what's actually coming back, we can click this show response here. And we can see here the actual raw data that comes back from Search Console. Now, most of the time you don't need to worry about this, but sometimes for like debugging, or if you want to get really like nitty gritty of how the fields that come back are mapped to the fields in your base, then you might want to look at stuff here as well. So once we're happy with that mapping, we click save and run, and it's going to create those fields in the table for us, and then run the API request and add the data here. So there we go. So we've got all the data broken out by date. So once we've got that, then we can schedule it. So this is paid feature, but once you've upgraded, yeah, you can schedule. So at the moment, we'd have to come in and run it manually, but we can schedule this. So we might say, run this, and let's do it every 5 minutes, and then we can come back at the end of the demo and see if it's run or not. So we'll say 5 minutes between 9 and 6 o'clock, and we'll save that. So now that's going to use the data fetcher is basically going to do that in the background for us. So even if we closed Airtable, we weren't logged into our computer or whatever, that's just going to run for us. So that's the first example. So working with some marketing data, but there's a bunch of other kind of use cases. So another one that a lot of people use is currency conversion. So here we've got a list of transactions. So we've got different currencies, different amounts, and then different historical dates, like when those transactions happened. And we want to basically find out the value of that transaction in dollars. So if we create a second request, there's an application called exchangerate.host that lets us do currency conversion for free. So we select the application and then got different endpoints. So an endpoint is just a like a kind of a type of data, or the type of data we want to get from the application. So we're going to convert from one currency to another. And here we can actually use so we want basically what we want to do for each of these transactions, right? We want to get the USD rate. So we want to get the currency with that amount on that date. And so we can actually create references to that data in our table. So we could either select like a fixed one here, or we can click this little plus on the right-hand side and say, we want to insert a reference to the table. So we want to use the transactions table, the currency field, and then rather than not just one record, we want to select basically every record in that view. So we're going to click confirm. And then we want to convert that to dollars. So that is a fixed value. We don't need that to be dynamic. We always want to turn it into dollars. And then we can do the same thing for the date. And finally for the amount. So now we can see we've got those references to the fields in our table. And we've got the USD there, and we can save and run that. Okay, and again, we've got this field map in. So this time we're only going to get one record of data, which is what we want, right? So each transaction, we just want to get the currency and add that to the record. So I'm going to click filter all here to get rid of all of these. And then I'm going to scroll to the right, and we can see we've got a result here. So we've got this result field on the right-hand side. And that is basically the result. And you can see it's suggested a number field. We can change that to a currency field using this drop down. And we know we want dollars, but if we want to change that, we could change that here. So we've got dollars here, and then we click save and run. And it's going to create that result field. And then for each record in our table, it's going to go and grab that amount in dollars. And again, we could schedule this. We could even add a webhook. So we could add a little webhook that says, when a new record is created that doesn't have that result, go and get this from the exchange rate API. So we could basically say, yeah, whenever one's updated or created, go and get that and fill in the result field for us. So both of these that I've showed you so far are kind of pre-built requests. So and what I mean by that is, like, we didn't really need to know that it's using an API underneath. We didn't add any API like URL or endpoint or anything like that. And we've got about 30 different applications where we've done that work of kind of abstracting all that away, so you don't need to know that it's using an API underneath. The data fetcher actually started with something else, and that's custom requests.
Maybe, Andy, we've got a couple of questions. Maybe
sorry.
The API part. That's all right. That's right. Yeah, I'll just so I asked if people have questions, feel free to write in the chat, and then I can sort of interrupt Andy from time to time. So first one was around actually the pricing. I was really happy with having the free tier. In terms of the runs that you get, just a clarification. So is that basically every time you would run a request, no matter how many rows, or is it based on per rows of data that you're actually?
The pricing could definitely be simpler. So it's kind of a combination of both of those things. But for the second example, like the exchange rate one, each of these records, each of these like 5, would use a run in the pricing. I'll just show the pricing here. So each of those would have used that would have used 5 of our 100 runs. And then for the Google Search Console, that would have just been 1, because it just ran one request and brought back a load of data. And there's also something called the records here. And this is to do with how much data comes back from the API. So this one would have used 28 records. This would have used 5 in total. So yeah, the pricing, I'll be really honest, could be a little bit simpler in terms of that running like a record or a request on multiple records. I'm trying to look at how we can simplify that in the future. But yeah, this one would use 5, and this one would have used 1.
Very clear. And is it something that like when sort of people are getting close to their limits, is it just sort of that the request would stop working, or you're sort of like notifying the users ahead of time when they're getting close? How does that work?
Yeah, you get a warning when you're getting to like the last like 10% of your plan, and then they're paused once you get to your plan, and then obviously if you upgrade, you can restart them.
So there's no auto charging or anything like that.
Sorry.
There's no auto charging or anything like that.
There's no auto charging. No, your if you've got schedule requests, they're paused. There's no kind of overage or kind of like auto or like credits or anything. And if you're on the free plan, you just need some extra requests just to troubleshoot stuff. We're always happy just to reset your account and your usage just temporarily.
Perfect. And couple of questions regarding the Google Search Console integration. So is there, does sort of the Google Search Console integration let you access all or most of the data? For example, could you import keywords, or is it only able to aggregate periodical data?
Yeah, you can do keywords. I'll show that quickly. So yeah, if we wanted to change this, so rather than splitting it by date, we want to split it by the keyword or the query, they call it. Then we can do that instead. So now we've got another field coming back called query rather than date. And then we've got the different results here. So if we,
really nice.
we run that. Yeah, you can see we've got hundreds and hundreds of different queries there.
So smooth. You don't have to actually manually add the columns all the time that you guys are taking care of. That's really nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Cool. Shall I keep going?
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Yeah. So the final one I'll show you is how data fetch is started, which is custom requests. So this obviously requires people to know a little bit more about APIs. But we find people that can get started with this without the complexity of coding or writing like a script. You just need to kind of be able to understand API documentation and kind of the different things they're asking for. And we've also got a import from curl command feature here. So a lot of API docs will give you a curl command, and you can paste it in here and get started that way as well. So this allows you to connect to basically any API or any remote file by entering the API details. So I'll just show you an example. So this is the CoinGecko API, which is quite a nice one to work with because it's just open. We don't need any kind of authentication. We can just look at the different URLs like this, and we can see the data here. And so if we paste that in the URL here, and then we'll use the coins table and save and run that, we can see all this data that's coming back, which is the same as the data that we can see here in JSON. And in fact, we can look at the JSON like we did earlier and see the JSON there. And then we can see each of those fields, and we can turn each one off and on as to whether we want it in our table or not. And then data fetch is actually going to make those suggestions again. So you can see this one, these are all image URLs. So it's going to suggest an attachment field, current price, it's just suggested a number. So it doesn't know that's a price, so we could change it to currency. And then we could filter out these ones. And we can save and run that. And in a second, the images will load through as well. So we can see all the different logos there. So yeah, we can change the parameters in here based on the API documentation. I won't go too much into that, but if you understand, kind of the basics of APIs, you can see you can set up like authorization here. So a lot of APIs require us to add a token or a username and password here. We can also add headers or a body. For anyone that's used Postman, this UI is obviously quite familiar, and lets us kind of configure all those details. And once we've done that, that will affect how the data comes back from the API, or what it gives us. We can also kind of change how it's written to the table. So the default is that it just updates the records that are already in place here, but we can change to append here for the write mode. And you can see, so we had 100 records in there. If we run that now, it's going to create new records at the bottom. So we've now got 200 in there. So the append mode will always add new data. So you might want to say each month, go and get some report or something and add that as new data at the bottom, and then perhaps graph those over time, whatever. And then back on the update mode, within that update, we can do a few things to kind of upsert or suggest like how the data that comes back should be merged with the data that's in there. So we can see we've got this symbol field here, which is like a unique field for each coin. We could also use ID, and we can basically say for the update based on field here. So this is like a merge or like a unique field that we can use to kind of match what comes back with what's in the table. We can say use that symbol field, and then we can say delete any records that are in our table that aren't in the API response. So that's going to trim those extra 100 ones off. And then just to demo this, so if I move this around, just to show that it's not just done on where the record is in the table, and I'm going to make the price of Bitcoin, I'm going to clear that out. So now when it runs, it's going to find that Bitcoin one and reset it to the price. So even if you've got filters or sorts on there so that the records are in different places, it's now going to kind of match the two things, what's in your table with what comes back from the API. And the final thing to show on this is pagination. So a lot of APIs will only give you a certain amount of data per API call. They use pagination to split that data into maybe pages of like 100 coins in this example. And we can set that up really easily using the pagination bit here. So there's different types of pagination, but CoinGecko uses page, and we need to add a page parameter here. And then we can either fetch all the pages, which we won't do because I think there's literally hundreds of cryptocurrencies, or we can set it to 4 here. And now we can see when we run it, it's going to go first page and then second page and create those extra records. And it's going to do that for the first 4 pages. So we'll have, when it finishes, we'll have 400 records in here.
Everyone's very impressed at how easy you've made this, Andy. I'm trying to do this in other low-code tools. It's very difficult.
Cheers. So that's all the stuff on custom request. There's a load more options in terms of like how exactly the output should map down the bottom here. So we can add like a fixed value to every output. We can rate limit it. So certain APIs only let you make a certain number of requests per minute. And then we can add some other kind of small options here. And then the last thing to show is fetching a CSV. So if you've got a remote CSV or an XML file, that's very similar to an API. So we can use a custom request again. So this is just a CSV file. It's just an open data file from like the UK government, but it could be any sort of link to a CSV in some kind of legacy system. A lot of them will expose that. And say you want to kind of go and like upload that into your Airtable like every day. We can basically do that in the same way that we did the CoinGecko API. So using a custom request, we can see all the data that comes back. And then we can create those fields. Whoops, I did it in the coins table. There we go. So yeah, there we go. We can see all the data's come into these extra fields here. And then, yeah, let's just go back to the Search Console one that we ran every 5 minutes. And hopefully we can see that it was running while we were demoing the other bits. So if we just go into the top right here, there's this run history. And yeah, there we go. So we had some errors. Interesting. This service is temporarily unavailable. Interesting. Curse of the demo. There we go. But yeah,
always happens. Always
the way. So I'd imagine that's the Airtable API, but it could be that probably comes from Google. Have to have a look at that. But yeah, so if we had this scheduled, we can go through and debug it here and see what the issue was. And you can search by just the successful ones, just the error ones. And yeah, there we go. We can see it's kicked off again for the schedule. And yeah, final thing to say, yeah, it's just the pricing plans. Kind of touched on it originally, but yeah, you get 100 runs a month for free, and that's just manual runs. If you want to schedule stuff, then you need to upgrade, and then you can also add team members, and you get more runs on the bigger ones. You can also use webhooks to kick off a request as well. And yeah, we've got a complete range of businesses. We've got a lot of SMBs and small agencies and stuff, and then we've got some big corporate customers that are doing hundreds of thousands of requests a month and using it for their operations. So yeah, I hope that was useful.
Very clear.
Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks so much, Andy. That was a great demo. One question from the chat as well, more about your company setup. So is DataFetcher a bootstrapped company, or you've received some investment?
Yeah, it's bootstrapped. Yeah, so I used to be a software developer, so I built the original version, and yeah, it's bootstrapped. I'm still the only full-time person. We've got 3 part-time people now, 1 developer, and then 2 people that help with our marketing content. So yeah, if you go to our blog, there's a blog post a little while ago about the journey bootstrapping to 10K. And yeah, so I'm also building in public on Twitter if you want to follow along.
Definitely. And yeah, interested to know about the integrations. Do you have some stats about like what are the top integrations that the customers are using? Is it more the marketing ones, or what's the?
Yeah, the biggest one is probably Google Maps, maybe surprisingly. So people use the Google Maps one to geocode, so getting the distance and time between pairs of locations, and then looking up the latitude and longitude of addresses. So yeah, that's one of the biggest ones. But yeah, the marketing ones are really popular. So Google Analytics, Facebook ads, and Google Search Console are all really popular. Quite a lot of crypto stuff as well. And then the currency conversion one that I showed you, that's really popular as well. So we launched those like a year ago, before it was just the custom request that I showed you at the end. The surprising thing to me has been that it's the majority of activity is still using the custom requests. So it's probably still like 60% are using the custom stuff rather than the pre-built ones. I think just because we were known for that originally, and because I guess there are a lot of other solutions for doing the marketing APIs versus the custom stuff. There's not a lot of tools that do it in kind of with the same flexibility that we do.
And what's sort of your process in picking the next integrations to work on? Are you sort of looking at what people are doing in the custom requests and then maybe
exactly exactly that. So that's how we pick which ones to do originally. And yeah, the dominant ones were like, and that it's not just our integrations, but it's also like our marketing as well. So we've got a blog with all of these examples, and a YouTube channel as well. And like we started off picking topics by what people were doing with custom requests. Then we made it even easier by launching the integrations, and now it's kind of a virtuous cycle. But yeah, you can also request one, so you can ask here and suggest that we add one. And if it's, I mean, sometimes people request one that I think they're like the only person using this API, and so it's maybe not a priority. But whereas if it's one that I think at least, as long as at least 2 or 3 people are going to find it helpful and maybe turn to a customer, then it's worthwhile launching. So yeah, you can ask an application as well.
Nice. And what's sort of the on your product roadmap coming up for DataFetcher? Is it just about adding more and more integrations, or you've got some other things that you guys are working on?
Yeah, it was for a long time. For most of this year, it was just adding integrations. Now trying to slow that down a bit and do them a little bit more. I found that if you launch too many integrations too quickly, people, like, all the edge cases pop up, and you just spend like a lot of time. Like each one comes with a bit of maintenance and a bit of bug fixes and stuff like that. So slowing down new integrations, and we're launching. Well, we're going to integrate. I don't know if you saw Airtable changed the API quite a bit recently. So they basically allowing us to do webhooks with the API, as well as like creating tables and getting the base schema and stuff like that. So we need to integrate with that. I think we can probably add some new features using that. So stuff like a record changes, go and like update the currency or stuff. We could probably build that into DataFetcher. Like we wouldn't need to use scripts or webhooks or anything outside of that. So I think we can improve how we use Airtable's API basically, as well as they're launching like OAuth rather than just API keys. So that's going to be quite big. At the moment, if you change the name of this table, then
we know that one.
So then you get an error here, right? And So we need to use like switch to IDs rather than names, which is long overdue. So definitely need to change that one. And then the other thing we're launching is a second extension, actually. So hopefully later this month. So we're launching, I can give you a sneak preview. But we're launching a charts extension. So the idea is like Google Data Studio within Airtable. So rather than having to send your data to Sheets or somewhere like that, basically being able to create different reports and then add charts right inside Airtable. So Airtable's chart extension is a bit limited, as I'm sure a lot of people find. Like you can't add multiple lines like this. You can only add one line per chart and stuff like that. So we basically want to make this really, really flexible and then allow you to download it as a PDF. So if you've got stakeholders that don't use Airtable, allow you to share a PDF with them, or even send them an email each Monday that says, here's the chart. So yeah, that should be launching. We submitted it to the Airtable marketplace last week, so that should be launching hopefully this year. So quite excited about that as well.
Does it already have a name, or that's still under?
It's going to be. I think it's going to be charts and reports by data fetcher. So yeah, I mean, I find with the extension names, you're better off just being it. Like like there's no point trying to be too cute with it. I think it's basically like even the name data fetcher, right? With like a space in the middle. Like I find like most of the names are just utility, like very descriptive. But I think we're going to do by date fetcher just to like keep the brand association in there, so that people know it's from us.
Yeah, and it'll probably smart because you will have, I guess, a lot of people already searching for data fetcher, which then at least
hopefully, yeah. I mean,
organic.
Yeah, we're actually. I noticed today if you search for data, we're the 27th result, which is kind of
Airtable SEO, a whole new.
Airtable SEO is rudimentary, but I mean it's fine. We're still getting plenty of users.
Nice. Really cool. And in terms of, I guess, so you're sort of all in on building more integrations from Airtable, or is it something that is a possibility to, I guess, integrate with other no-code tools like Notion? Some people are asking in the chat, or I guess it's a lot of work for you.
Yeah, we looked at, we almost launched a Monday app earlier in the year. It didn't quite work out. Building on the platform wasn't particularly easy, but I would, in theory, I'd like to make it multi-platform so we reduce that platform risk. I think it's a different ball game. And I think I looked at Notion, and actually there's no real way to do add-ons like this. They do have add-ons, but they're from GitHub and people like that. And I don't think they have a way for kind of smaller developers like us to build something like that. I also, I'd love to make it like an extension on Smartsheet or like some other coder or something like that, but I don't think quite ready to go there. I also think we're in quite a nice sweet spot business wise at the moment in terms of like there's no VC backed company that's going to build data fetcher because it's not a big enough opportunity. At the same time, it's big enough that like it could be a really healthy like profitable business and around for a long time. So I think in some ways, obviously the platform risk is scary, but I don't think Airtable's going anywhere. And so in some ways it's easier just to focus on one.
Yeah, and really exciting that there's a new extension coming out as well. Obviously you're doing this, like you said, you're the only full-time person at Data Fetcher. So I'm interested, are there any other no-code tools that you're using to sort of get help that helps Data Fetcher run in the background?
That's a great question. What are you using? A lot of native Airtable stuff like automations, basically just, kind of all in on Airtable for like the user backlog, like user stories backlog, sorry. And then like marketing pipeline as well. So using like the Kanban stuff. Beyond that, not really. Like we're using HighGraph, Graph CMS or HighGraph for CMS. And then just Slack and Figma and stuff like that. But no real, I wouldn't say we're using any third-party tools. Definitely not using Zapier.
No.
Chartmerg as well, yeah. Someone spotted it.
Exactly. Really nice. Cool. Well then, I don't think if there's no more questions, then Andy, thank you so much for this demo. It was really, really useful. And I know that there's a lot of people now a bit excited for our API module that's coming up next week in our bootcamp. So we'll be out a few more custom requests coming your way, I think.
Awesome. Sounds great. Yeah. Thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, everyone.